The $10 bill in Marcus Webb's wallet wasn't just money. It was 3 days of food for his daughter. It was the difference between keeping the lights on or sitting in darkness. It was the fragile thread holding together what remained of his life after everything had fallen apart. But standing there in the freezing rain outside the 7-Eleven on Route 9 in Virginia, watching an elderly woman dig through her purse with shaking hands while the cashier glared impatiently, Marcus felt that thread pulling him towards something he couldn't explain. His 5-year-old daughter, Lily, tugged at his jacket sleeve. "Daddy, that lady's crying," she whispered, her voice small and worried. The girl had her mother's eyes, warm brown, impossibly kind, and every time Marcus looked at her, he felt the ache of 3 years' worth of absence. Cancer didn't care that Sarah had been only 32, that she'd had dreams bigger than their small apartment, that their daughter still asked when Mommy was coming home. If you understand what it means to have nothing left but still choose to give, stay with us. This story will remind you why that matters. The woman at the counter was maybe 70, her coat thin and patched at the elbows, her hands trembling as she counted coins for the 3rd time. "I'm sorry," she kept saying, her voice broke. "I thought I had enough. I just need bread and milk. My grandson, he hasn't eaten since yesterday." The cashier, a kid barely out of high school, a name tag reading Tyler, drummed his fingers on the counter. "Lady, there's a line. Either pay or move." Marcus felt something ignite in his chest. Not anger exactly, but a fierce recognition of desperate need. He'd been there. Hell, he was still there most days, juggling rent and daycare and the crushing weight of medical debt that Sarah's illness had left behind. His carpentry work was steady when he could get it, but November was slow, and the bills didn't care about slow months. That $10 was supposed to buy Lily's lunch supplies for the rest of the week. Peanut butter, bread, maybe some bananas if he stretched it. But Sarah's voice echoed in his memory, clear as the day she'd said it from her hospital bed, her hand weightless in his. "Teach Lily that kindness costs nothing, Marcus. Even when we have nothing left, we can still give that." He'd promised her, promised through tears, that he'd raise their daughter to see people, really see them, the way Sarah always had. Marcus stepped forward, his work boots squeaking on the wet linoleum. "I've got it," he said quietly, pulling out his wallet before he could change his mind. The woman turned, her face collapsing with relief and embarrassment. "Oh no, I couldn't." But Marcus was already handing the cashier a $10 bill, leaving his own purchases, Lily's juice boxes and a loaf of store-brand bread, still sitting on the counter. "It's okay," he told the woman, forcing a smile that felt like lifting weights. "We all need help sometimes." The cashier rang up the woman's item, milk, bread, a small jar of peanut butter, and handed her the bag. She clutched it to her chest like a lifeline, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. "God bless you," she whispered, reaching out to squeeze Marcus's hand. "You don't know what this means. My grandson, he's all I have left, and Social Security doesn't come until next week." Marcus nodded, his throat tight. "Take care of him," he managed to say. As the woman left, Tyler the cashier stared at Marcus like he'd grown a second head. "Dude, you know she's probably running a scam, right? Happens all the time." Marcus picked up his daughter, settling her on his hip even though she was getting too big for, and met the kid's cynical gaze. "Maybe," he said evenly, "but if there's even a chance that little boy is hungry, then it wasn't a scam. It was necessary." Outside, the rain had turned to sleet, coating everything in a dangerous glaze. Marcus walked Lily to their old Ford pickup, 15 years old, rust spots blooming on the wheel wells, but paid off and still running. They'd have to skip the groceries now. Maybe he could make mac and cheese stretch for a few more meals, add some frozen vegetables he'd bought last week. They'd be okay. They always figured it out. Lily was quiet on the drive home, staring out the window at the dark Virginia countryside, farmhouses scattered like islands in an ocean of bare trees. Finally she spoke. "Mommy would be proud of you, Daddy." Marcus blinked hard against the sudden sting in his eyes, his hands tightening on the steering wheel. "Yeah, baby," he whispered. "I hope so." He had no idea that in less than 12 hours, everything would change. That the simple act of giving away his last $10 would set in motion a series of events so unexpected, so impossible, that he'd question whether he was dreaming or whether something bigger than luck was at work in his life. All he knew, driving through that cold November night with his daughter humming softly beside him, was that he'd done the right thing. Even if it cost them everything, it was still right. And sometimes, the universe pays attention when you choose right over easy. Marcus and Lily lived in a small rental house on the outskirts of Fredericksburg, Virginia, a place that had seen better days but was clean and safe, and theirs. The landlord, Mrs. Chen, was patient about rent as long as Marcus stayed current eventually, and the neighbors mostly kept to themselves, which suited him fine. He didn't have energy for small talk after 12-hour shifts, framing houses or installing kitchen cabinets. Every evening was the same routine. Pick up Lily from his sister Rachel's place where she watched the girl after kindergarten, make dinner from whatever was left in the fridge, help with homework though kindergarten homework felt absurd, then collapse into bed and pray tomorrow would be easier. That Tuesday night, they ate scrambled eggs and toast, breakfast for dinner, which Lily thought was a grand, and Marcus tried not to calculate how many days until his next paycheck. 4 days, and his bank account had $37 in. The electric bill was due Friday. He'd figure it out. He always did. Around 9 p.m. after Lily was asleep, Marcus sat at their tiny kitchen table surrounded by medical bills he couldn't pay, collection notices he'd stopped opening, and the constant background hum of anxiety that had become his normal. Sarah's cancer treatment had cost over $400,000, even with insurance. They'd remortgaged everything, maxed out credit cards, borrowed from family until there was nothing left to borrow, and in the end, it hadn't mattered. She'd died anyway, leaving Marcus with a mountain of debt and a 5-year-old girl who still set a place for mommy at dinner sometime. He'd just stood up to make coffee when the knock came. Sharp, official, measured raps that made his stomach drop. Nobody knocked like that unless something was wrong. Marcus moved quickly to the door, checking through the peephole first. 2 police officers stood on his small porch, their breath visible in the cold air, faces neutral and professional. His heart hammered. Had something happened at Rachel's? Was Lily okay? No. Lily was asleep down the hall. Then what? He opened the door, cold air rushing in. Can I help you, officers? The older one, a black man maybe 50 years old with sergeant stripes on his sleeve, consulted a small notebook. Are you Marcus Webb? His voice was careful, revealing nothing. Yes, sir. Is something wrong? The sergeant exchanged a glance with his partner, a younger woman with sharp eyes that seemed to catalog everything about Marcus in 2 seconds. Sir, were you at the 7-Eleven on Route 9 this evening, approximately 6:15 p.m.? Marcus felt his mouth go dry. Had something happened to that elderly? Had she collapsed? Had a heart attack? Yes, I was there. I helped someone with groceries. Is she okay? The female officer tilted her head slightly. Can you describe what happened? So Marcus did, his words stumbling over themselves. The woman counting change, the hungry grandson, the $10 he'd given without thinking it through. I just wanted to help, he finished, feeling defensive without knowing why. Did I do something wrong? The sergeant's expression softened almost imperceptibly. No, Mr. Webb, you did something very right. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card, handing it to Marcus. The card was heavy, expensive stock, embossed with gold lettering. Eleanor Hartman, Chief Executive Officer, Hartman Foundation. Marcus stared at it, confused. I don't understand. The female officer spoke, her voice gentler. The woman you helped this evening was Eleanor Hartman's mother, Dorothy. Mrs. Hartman had a major stroke 3 months ago and has been living with her daughter while recovering. She has dementia, Mr. Webb. She wandered away from home this afternoon while her caretaker was using the bathroom. The family had half the police department and 3 private security firms searching for. Marcus felt the world tilt slightly. I didn't know. She seemed confused, but I just thought. The sergeant nodded. You thought she was someone in need, so you helped. No questions asked. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. Mrs. Hartman is one of the wealthiest women on the East Coast. The Hartman Foundation manages over $2 billion in charitable assets. When her mother returned home safe with groceries she couldn't explain buying, and the 7-Eleven security footage showed what you did, Mrs. Hartman asked us to find you immediately. The business card felt like it weighed 10 pounds in Marcus's hand. Why? The sergeant smiled. A real smile now, not the professional mask. Because she wants to thank you, personally. And because, in her word, anyone who gives away their last $10 to feed a stranger's grandson deserves more than just thank you. He handed Marcus a sealed envelope, thick and formal. She'll be calling you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Answer your phone, Mr. Webb. Your life's about to get a whole lot better. They left after that, walking back to their patrol car while Marcus stood frozen in his doorway, clutching the envelope and business card like they might evaporate. His hands shook as he opened the envelope. Inside was a cashier's check made out to him, and when Marcus saw the amount, his legs nearly gave out. $50,000. $50,000. A note in elegant handwriting accompanied. For the man who taught me that true wealth has nothing to do with bank accounts. This is just the beginning. Thank you for saving my mother and restoring my faith in humanity. Eleanor Hartman. Marcus stumbled back inside, closed the door, and slid down to sit on the floor. The check clutched in his trembling hands. He couldn't breathe right. This wasn't real. Things like this didn't happen to people like him. Single fathers drowning in debt, barely keeping their heads above water, one emergency away from losing everything. He sat there for 20 minutes, maybe longer, until Lily's small voice called from her bedroom. Daddy, are you okay? He wiped his eyes quickly and went to her. kneeling beside her small bed with its princess sheets Sarah had bought 3 years ago. "I'm okay, baby. Go back to sleep." But Lily sat up, her brown eyes serious beyond her. "Did the police come because of the lady we helped?" "Smart girl. Too smart sometime." Marcus nodded. "Yeah, sweetheart. Turns out that lady's daughter wants to say thank you." Lily smiled sleepily. "Mommy's watching us, Daddy. She made it happen." Marcus kissed her forehead, his heart cracking open. "Maybe so, Lily. Maybe so." As his daughter drifted back to sleep, Marcus returned to the kitchen table and stared at the check that represented more money than he'd seen in his entire life. The medical bills scattered across the table suddenly looked different. Not insurmountable, but solvable. Rent, utilities, food, maybe even a small college fund for Lily. The crushing weight that had pressed on his shoulders for 3 years had just lifted. He didn't sleep couldn't. Just sat there in the dark kitchen, waiting for 9 a.m. and a phone call that would change everything. Eleanor Hartman called exactly at 9 a.m., her voice warm but carrying the unmistakable authority of someone used to moving mountains with a word. "Mr. Webb, I hope I didn't frighten you with last night's visit. I wanted to handle this properly, and the police were kind enough to help me find you quickly." Marcus, who'd been pacing his small living room since 7 a.m. while Lily ate cereal and watched cartoons, tried to sound coherent. "Mrs. Hartman, I don't know what to say. Check you sent. It's too much. I can't accept." "You can and you will," Eleanor interrupted gently. "Mr. Webb, may I call you Marcus?" He nodded, then realized she couldn't see him. "Yes, ma'am." Her voice softened. "Marcus, my mother is the most important person in my world. When the stroke happened, when the dementia diagnosis came, I thought I'd lose her piece by piece. Yesterday, when she wandered off, I was terrified. Every minute she was missing felt like dying. Then she came home safe, clutching a bag of groceries, talking about the angel man who helped her." Marcus heard emotion crack through her composed exterior. "Security footage showed me everything. You had $10, one $10 bill. You gave it to a confused stranger and walked away without even buying what you'd come for. Do you know how rare that is? In a world where billionaires step over homeless people on their way to buy $1,000 dinners, you, struggling to feed your own child, gave everything you had." She paused, and Marcus heard her take a shaky breath. "That check isn't charity, Marcus. It's recognition. It's me saying that people like you, who give when they have nothing, deserve to receive when others have everything." Marcus sank onto his worn couch, his free hand covering his eyes. "I just did what felt right. What my wife would have done." There was silence on the line, then Eleanor spoke again, her voice thick. "Tell me about her." So Marcus did. He told this stranger about Sarah, how they'd met in community college, how she'd believed in him when his own family hadn't, how she'd fought cancer with a ferocity that terrified and inspired him, how she'd made him promise to teach Lily that kindness mattered more than money or status. By the time he finished, both of them were crying. "She sounds extraordinary," Eleanor said softly, "and she'd be proud of what you did yesterday. But Marcus, I want to do more than just give you. The Hartman Foundation's mission is to identify and support people who make their communities better through quiet acts of service. I'd like to feature your story, if you'll allow it. Not for publicity, for you I mean, but to inspire others. To show people that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear work boots and give away their last $10. Marcus wiped his face with the back of his hand. "I'm not a hero, Mrs. Hartman. I'm just a dad trying to keep his head above water." Eleanor's response was immediate, fierce. "That's exactly what makes you a hero. You're drowning, and you still reached out to save someone else. That's the definition of heroism." She took a breath, shifting into business mode. "Here's what I'd like to First, that $50,000 is yours, no strings attached. Pay off whatever debts are crushing you. Second, I'd like to offer you a position as a community outreach coordinator for the foundation. $30 an hour, full benefits, flexible schedule so you can be there for Lily. Your job would be identifying people and programs that need support. People like you, who give more than they have." Marcus couldn't speak. The number didn't make sense. $30 an hour was more than he'd ever made in his life, with benefits, flexible schedule. He'd be able to take Lily to school himself, pick her up, be present instead of constantly scrambling. "I don't have a degree," he finally managed. "I barely finished community college before Sarah got sick." "You have something better than a degree," Eleanor countered. "You have empathy. You have integrity. You understand what it means to struggle, and you haven't let that struggle make you cruel or selfish. Those aren't things you can learn in a classroom, Marcus. They're forged in fire, and you've been through hell. I need someone who sees people, really sees them. Someone who won't dismiss need because it's inconvenient or uncomfortable. Can you do that?" Could he? Marcus thought about the last 3 years. The exhaustion, the fear, the constant calculation of which bill to pay first and which to let slide. He thought about Lily growing up watching him barely survive, learning that life was just about enduring rather than living. He thought about Sarah's voice. Teach her that kindness costs nothing. What if he could teach Lily that kindness could change everything? That one moment of generosity could ripple outward in ways you couldn't predict. Yes, Marcus said, his voice stronger now. Yes, I can do that. Eleanor's relief was audible. Thank you. Can you come to our office in McLean tomorrow? We'll handle paperwork, get you set up, introduce you to the team. And Marcus? Bring Lily. I'd like to meet the little girl who reminded you to see people's pain. She sounds remarkable. They talked for another 20 minutes. Eleanor explaining the foundation's work, scholarships for struggling students, grants for community programs, support for families facing medical bankruptcy like Marcus had. By the time they hung up, Marcus felt like he'd been holding his breath for 3 years, and finally could exhale. He picked up Lily, spinning her around the living room while she shrieked with laughter. Daddy, what's happening? He set her down, kneeling to her level. Remember the lady we helped? Her daughter wants to say thank you, and baby, she's going to help us too. Things are going to be different, better. Lily wrapped her small arms around his neck. I told you. Mommy was watching. Marcus held his daughter close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, feeling the weight of 3 years of terror and exhaustion finally begin to lift. Maybe Lily was right. Maybe Sarah was watching. Or maybe the universe just occasionally paid attention when someone chose kindness over self-preservation. Either way, Marcus understood something fundamental had shifted. His life, their life, had been heading toward a cliff edge, and one moment of compassion had changed their trajectory completely. That $10 hadn't just bought an elderly woman groceries, it had bought Marcus and Lily a future. The Hartman Foundation's offices in McLean, Virginia, occupied the top 3 floors of a glass building that looked like something from a different world than the one Marcus inhabited. He and Lily stood in the marble lobby the next morning, both of them dressed in their best clothes, which for Marcus meant khakis without stains and a button-down shirt Rachel had ironed for him, and for Lily meant the dress she wore to church, navy blue with white flowers. They looked, Marcus thought with a mixture of pride and anxiety, like people pretending to belong somewhere they didn't. But Eleanor Hartman, when she met them in the lobby, made that anxiety evaporate with a single genuine smile. She was maybe 60, silver hair cut in a sharp bob, wearing an elegant pantsuit that probably cost more than Marcus made in a month. But her eyes were kind, the same warm, brown as her mother's had been. Marcus, she said, extending her hand. Thank you for coming. Then she crouched down to Lily's level. And you must be Lily. Your dad told me you're the one who noticed my mother needed help. That makes you pretty special. Lily, usually shy around strangers, studied Eleanor seriously. Your mommy was scared. People get scared when they're lost. Eleanor's eyes shimmered. You're right. She was very scared. But your dad made her feel safe. That's a gift not meant. People have. She stood, composing herself, and gestured toward the elevator. Come on up. I want you to meet some people and see what we do here. The 23rd floor was organized chaos. People at standing desks, phones ringing, conversations about grant applications and site visits and community needs assessments. But when Eleanor walked in with Marcus and Lily, work paused. She'd clearly told the staff what was happening, because people smiled at Marcus with something that looked like respect rather than the usual polite disinterest service workers got from office professionals. Eleanor introduced them to her team. Miguel, who ran community outreach in D.C., Jennifer, who handled grant applications, David, who managed the foundation's scholarship programs. Each person shook Marcus's hand and welcomed him genuinely, and several bent down to talk to Lily, admiring her dress or asking about kindergarten. It felt, Marcus realized with a strange ache, like belonging, like being seen, as a whole person, rather than just a pair of hands doing work nobody else wanted. Then, Eleanor led them to a conference room with windows overlooking the Potomac River, the Washington Monument visible in the distance. I want to show you something, she said, pulling up images on a large screen. This is what we do. The photos showed kids receiving scholarships, families moving into renovated housing, community centers being built in forgotten neighborhoods, medical debt being forgiven for families like his who'd been crushed by impossible bills. Last year, we helped 843 families. This year, we want to double that. But we need people on the ground, people who understand what struggle looks like to help us find the ones who need help most. Marcus stared at the images, emotion tight in his throat. I can do that. Eleanor nodded. I know you can. And Marcus, there's something else. She clicked to a new image. A certificate of debt cancellation. His name was on it. The $50,000 I gave you covers your immediate bills. But you still have $328,000 in medical debt from your wife's illness. As of this morning, the Hartman Foundation has purchased that debt and forgiven it entirely. You're free. The words didn't make sense at first. Marcus read the certificate 3 times before the reality penetrated. $328,000. Gone. The crushing weight that had made him wake up panicking. At 3 a.m., that had made every envelope in the mail a potential disaster, that had defined his entire existence for 3 years, just erased. I don't understand, he whispered. Why would you do this? Eleanor's expression was fierce. Because our healthcare system is broken, and good people like you and Sarah shouldn't be destroyed by. Because you gave $10 you couldn't afford to help my mother, and that act of grace deserves grace in return. Because the best way to honor people who give everything is to give them back their lives. She reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. You're not a charity case, Marcus. You're an investment. I believe you're going to help hundreds of people through this work. This is me making that possible. Marcus couldn't stop the tears this time. They came hard and fast, years of terror and exhaustion pouring out. Lily climbed into his lap, patting his face. It's okay, Daddy. Happy tears. He nodded, unable to speak, and Eleanor quietly excused herself to give them privacy. When Marcus finally pulled himself together, he found a box of tissues on the table and a note. Take your time. When you're ready, Jennifer will show you your office. Welcome to the team. His office. The words felt absurd and wonderful. Marcus had never had an office, had worked his entire adult life with his hands, building things for other people. Now he had a small room with a window, a desk, a computer, and a nameplate that read, Marcus Webb, Community Outreach Coordinator. Rachel brought Lily by after he got settled, and his sister stood in the doorway staring. Marcus, is this real? He showed her the debt cancellation certificate, the offer letter, the direct deposit setup for his first paycheck that would come in 2 weeks. Rachel cried, hugging him fiercely. Sarah's looking out for you. I always knew she would. That first week was overwhelming. Learning the foundation's systems, meeting community partners, understanding how to evaluate grant applications. But Miguel, his supervisor, was patient. You're not supposed to know everything immediately. Just bring what you do know, what struggle looks like, what people need versus what they ask for, how to see dignity in everyone you meet. That's what Eleanor saw in you, and that's what we... Marcus's first solo assignment came Friday afternoon, a referral from a church in Southeast D.C. A single mother with 3 kids facing eviction after her hours were cut. Marcus drove to meet her, Lily in the back seat with her coloring book, and found a woman who could have been him 6 months ago, terrified, exhausted, trying to hold everything together with willpower and prayer. Her name was Keisha. Her kids were hungry. The eviction notice was for Monday. Marcus didn't hesitate. He called the foundation's emergency assistance line, walked Keisha through the application right there at her kitchen table, and had a check authorized within an hour. Rent, covered for 3 months, grocery gift cards, connections to job training programs. Keisha sobbed the same way Marcus had in that conference room. Why are you helping me? She asked. Marcus told her about the $10, about Dorothy, about Eleanor. Someone helped me when I had nothing. Now I get to help you. That's how this works. Kindness ripples. Driving home that night, Lily was quiet for a long time. Then, Daddy, are we rich now? Marcus thought about it carefully. We have enough, baby. Maybe for the first time ever we have enough. And that means we can help other people have enough too. Does that make sense? Lily nodded solemnly. Mommy would like that. Marcus reached back to squeeze her hand. Yeah, sweetheart, she really would. 3 months into his new job, Marcus found himself sitting in Eleanor Hartman's office for their quarterly review. He'd helped 47 families in that time, connected them to resources, approved emergency grants, advocated for people. The system had forgotten. The work was harder than construction in some ways, emotionally draining, but it filled a space in his soul that had been hollow since Sarah died. He was making a difference. Real, measurable difference. Eleanor reviewed his case files with obvious satisfaction. You have a gift for this, Mark. People trust you. They open up. That's rare. She paused, then pushed a folder across her desk. I want to show you something. Inside were photos of Dorothy, Eleanor's mother, at a care facility, smiling, engaged, clearly improving. She's getting better. The stroke recovery is slow, but the dementia symptoms have actually decreased with proper treatment and therapy. The doctors say stress was making it worse. And now that she's safe and cared for, she's more herself than she's been in a year. Marcus studied the photos, recognizing the woman he'd helped in that 7-Eleven parking lot. I'm glad she's okay. Eleanor met his eyes. She wants to meet you properly. This time, she doesn't remember that evening clearly, but when I told her the story, she cried. She asked if the angel man would come visit her. Marcus felt his throat tighten. I'd be honored. They went that weekend, Marcus and Lily, bringing flowers and Lily's latest drawings. Dorothy was sitting in a sunlit common room, doing a puzzle, and when Eleanor introduced them, the elderly woman's face lit up with recognition that felt almost supernatural. I know you, she said to Marcus, her voice stronger than it had been in the store. You helped me when I was lost. She turned to Lily. And you, such a pretty little girl. Were you there too? Lily nodded shyly. You were scared. My daddy helped you. Dorothy reached out, taking both of Marcus's hands in her weathered ones. Young man, do you know what it's like to be old and used? To not recognize the world anymore? It's terrifying. You treated me with dignity when I had none left. That's rarer than kindness. That's grace. She pulled him down to kiss his forehead, a grandmother's blessing. The world needs more men like... Marcus spent an hour with Dorothy, listening to stories about her life, growing up during the Depression, raising Eleanor alone after her husband died, building a career when women weren't supposed to want such things. She was sharp and funny and fierce, and Marcus understood exactly where Eleanor got her strength. When they left, Dorothy pressed a small box into Lily's hands. For the little girl who taught her father to see. Don't open it until you get home. In the car, Lily couldn't wait. Inside the box was a delicate silver necklace with a pendant shaped like a heart, and a note in shaky handwriting. To Lily, your mother is proud of you. Never stop reminding the world to be kind. Love, Dorothy. Lily looked at Marcus with wide eyes. How did she know about Mommy? Marcus shook his head, unable to speak around the lump in his throat. Some things couldn't be explained by logic. The following week brought unexpected news. A local television station had gotten wind of Marcus's story and wanted to do a feature about the foundation's work. Eleanor asked his permission first. I won't force this, but Marcus, your story could inspire others. Not just to give money, but to see people, to choose compassion when it's inconvenient. What do you think? Marcus thought about the single mother he'd helped that first week, about the dozens of families since then, about the ripple effect of one small act multiplied. If it helps more people, yes. The interview aired 2 weeks later, during the evening news. Marcus watched it with Lily and Rachel, cringing at hearing his own voice. But the response was immediate and overwhelming. The foundation's donation line lit up. People called wanting to volunteer, to sponsor families, to share their own stories of being helped by strangers. But the call that changed everything came from Tyler, the cashier from the 7-Eleven. His voice was hesitant. Mr. Webb, this is Tyler, from that night with the old lady. I saw you on TV. Marcus tensed, unsure what to expect. I wanted to apologize. I was a jerk. I thought she was scamming, and I judged you for helping. But I've been thinking about it ever since. About how you didn't hesitate, how you gave up your own stuff to help her. And I realized I've been angry and cynical because my life sucks, you know? Minimum wage, no benefits, treating people like crap, because I feel like crap. Marcus listened as the kid poured out his story. Single mom, younger siblings he helped support. Dreams of college he couldn't afford. I don't want to be that person anymore. The one who assumes the worst. Can you teach me how to be like you? Marcus felt something shift in his chest. This was what Eleanor had meant. One act rippling outward in ways you couldn't predict. Come meet me for coffee, Marcus said. Let's talk. Tyler became Marcus's first mentee. They met weekly. Marcus, sharing his story, connecting Tyler to resources, helping him apply for scholarships the foundation offered. Within 2 months, Tyler was enrolled in community college and volunteering at a food bank. You changed my life, he told Marcus one afternoon. Marcus shook his head. You changed your own life. You chose to see differently. I just showed you it was possible. By the time spring arrived, 6 months after that night in the 7-Eleven, Marcus's life had transformed so completely it felt like someone else's story. He had meaningful work, financial stability for the first time in years, and a sense of purpose that went beyond just surviving. Lily was thriving too, more confident, more engaged, talking about growing up to help people like her daddy did. But the biggest change was internal. Marcus no longer felt like he was drowning, no longer woke up at 3 a.m. paralyzed by fear. The crushing weight of debt and desperation had been replaced by something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not naive hope that ignored reality, but hard-earned hope built on the evidence that kindness mattered, that one person's choice could change trajectory, that even in the darkest moments, light could break through if you were brave enough to let it. 1 year after giving away his last $10, Marcus stood in the Hartman Foundation's annual gala, surrounded by donors and community partners, celebrating the year's achievements. Eleanor had insisted he attend, though he'd protested that he wasn't comfortable in a tuxedo. You're not just staff, Marcus. You're proof that our mission works. Besides, I have a surprise. The surprise came during Eleanor's keynote. She told the story of her mother's disappearance, of Marcus's act of kindness, of the ripple effect that followed. 138 families received assistance this year because Marcus Webb showed us what real generosity looks like. He gave when he had nothing, and that courage inspired others to give when they had everything. She gestured for Marcus to join her on stage. He did, reluctantly, blinded by spotlight and attention. Eleanor handed him an oversized check, not for him, but for a new program the foundation was launching in Sarah's name. The Sarah Webb Memorial Fund would provide support specifically for families facing medical bankruptcy. offering both financial assistance and emotional support from others who'd survived similar loss. Your wife believed kindness cost nothing, Eleanor said, her voice carrying across the ballroom. But we know the truth. Kindness costs everything when you have nothing left to give. This fund honors that sacrifice. Marcus couldn't speak, could only nod and mouth, "Thank you," while 500 people stood and applauded. Later, when the speeches ended, and the gala became a party he didn't know how to navigate, Dorothy found him hiding near the dessert table. "Overwhelmed?" she asked kindly. Marcus laughed, completely. She patted his arm. "Good. That means you haven't gotten comfortable. The moment you stop being amazed by grace, you stop deserving it." They talked for a long time, Dorothy sharing wisdom accumulated over 87 years, Marcus absorbing it like a man dying of thirst. "You know what nobody tells you about second chances?" Dorothy said eventually. "They come with responsibility. You've been given this gift, not just the money or the job, but the perspective. You know what it's like to have nothing and to choose generosity anyway. That knowing obligates you to teach others, to show them that wealth isn't about what you keep, but what you give away." Marcus thought about Tyler, now thriving in college and volunteering weekly, about Keisha, who'd gotten back on her feet and was now training to become a nurse, about the 47 families who'd become 60, then 80, then over 100 as his work expanded. Each connection he made, each person he helped, carried forward the gift he received, the ripples spreading wider than he could track. Near the end of the evening, Eleanor pulled Marcus aside. "I have one more thing to tell you. The board voted this week. We're creating a new position, Director of Community Impact. $55,000 a year, full benefit, autonomy to build programs you think are needed. I want you." Marcus stared at her. "Eleanor, I've been here 1 year. I barely know what I'm doing half the time." She smiled. "Exactly. You haven't learned the polite lies this sector tells itself. You still see people as people, not as data points or success metrics. That's what we need leading this work." Marcus thought about Sarah, about the promise he'd made to teach Lily that kindness mattered. This job would mean he could expand that teaching, touch more lives, create systems that helped people before they reached the edge of desperation he'd known. "Yes," he said. "Thank you. Yes." The next morning, Marcus took Lily to Sarah's grave, something they did every few months. He told his wife about the year, about the job, about the fund in her. "You always said I had more to give than just strong hands," he told the headstone. "Turns out you were right. Turns out giving away everything was the only way to get everything back." Lily placed flowers on the grave, daisies, Sarah's favorite. "Mommy knew, Daddy. She knew you'd be okay." Driving home through the Virginia countryside, spring turning everything green and alive, Marcus thought about that night in the 7-Eleven. How that single choice had saved him in ways he couldn't have imagined, not just financially, but spiritually, giving him back the sense of purpose and meaning that had died with Sarah. One act of compassion had unlocked a door he didn't know existed, leading to a life he'd never dared imagine for himself. People called it luck, divine intervention, karma. Marcus didn't know what name. He just knew that when you chose to give, even when you had nothing, when you saw people's pain and responded with grace instead of judgment, something fundamental shifted in the universe. Maybe you got back what you gave. Maybe you just noticed the gifts that had been waiting all along. Either way, the math worked out the same. Generosity multiplied rather than divided. The more you gave, the more you had to give. His phone buzzed with a text from Miguel. A new referral, a veteran facing eviction, needed help immediately. Marcus texted back, "On my way." This was his life, racing toward other people's emergencies, armed with resources and empathy, and the hard-won knowledge that everyone deserved to be seen. That $10 had become something immeasurable, a career, a purpose, a legacy he could pass to Lily that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with character. As he drove toward his next call, Marcus caught his reflection in the rearview mirror and barely recognized himself. The haunted exhaustion was gone, replaced by someone who looked alive, engaged, present. Not because all his problems had vanished, but because he'd learned the secret that poverty and privilege both miss. You find yourself when you stop protecting you. You become whole when you give pieces away. If this story reminded you that second chances are real, that kindness always finds its way back, share it with someone who needs to hear it. We all know someone standing where Marcus stood, one bad day from losing everything, one act of grace from being saved. Be the person who sees them. Be the person who gives when it's hardest. That's how we change the world. $10 at a time, one heart at a time, choosing love when logic says protect yourself. The universe is always watching, and sometimes, when you give everything, it gives everything back.